So Danny Cevallos, Elie Mystal, Paul Butler back with me, my legal eagles. All right, let's continue our debate about how hot the water is getting for Donald Trump. Now, we had this little back and forth, Danny, over whether or not Manafort was more dangerous to Trump than Cohen. And what you said is that Cohen is more dangerous to Trump himself.
That's correct.
Explain.
Yeah, Cohen's more dangerous to Trump because he stood in open court and essentially admitted to a crime that he participated in with a person that was essentially a candidate for office, and we all know who that was.
Right.
And it was something that up until that moment, until he pleaded, there was doubt in the minds of many as to whether or not the government, yeah, technically this was a crime, but would they really care about it? And now we know they care about election crimes. And Cohen named somebody else, being the president essentially, as complicit or at least involved or a co-conspirator in that crime. Part two of Cohen being more dangerous is that he's Trump's personal lawyer.
Right.
He's known him forever. He taped him as a lawyer, which is something that is just unthinkable to me. But he taped his client. He knows everything about Trump. Manafort, you could make an argument that he doesn't know as much about Trump. He only really knew him for a period of months. I can't believe it. I'm sounding like Trump now, making the same argument. But he did, you know, he didn't know him nearly as well as Michael Cohen did. So if you're playing the odds and you want to guess who's the most dangerous to Trump, not necessarily most beneficial to Mueller, then it has to be Cohen.
Yeah, and more dangerous to Trump and to his kids, because he shepherded them to Moscow to build Trump Tower projects and everything.
Yeah, I generally agree with Danny because Cohen knows about the PP tape, right? Like if that's real, Cohen's the one who knows about it.
Right.
And that's actually how Cohen, and again, I generally agree with Danny that Cohen's more dangerous to Trump personally, but that's how Cohen gets wrapped back into the Russia thing, because somebody maybe went to Prague to maybe talk to the Russians about
He says he didn't go.
He says that Lanny Davis says he didn't go, but that was, you know, now that Cohen's pled guilty, what does Cohen, maybe he went to Germany, maybe it wasn't, but like, who talked to who about the PP tape? That's kind of where Cohen shows up, and if he knows something about that, that's, I mean, it's gross, but it's like, that's the connection back into Russia.
Yeah, we just never want to see it. Let's listen to Lanny Davis on Rachel Maddow on August 21st talking about what Cohen knows.
I can tell you that Mr. Cohen has knowledge on certain subjects that should be of interest to the special counsel and is more than happy to tell the special counsel all that he knows. Paul
Butler, your view on what it is that he could know, because normally these campaign finance violation crimes they don't result, right, in a lot of jail time. I don't even think they're prosecuted that often, but they care now, but they obviously care because they think he might have something to tell them.
Yeah, normally you wouldn't go to jail for a campaign violation unless there's proof of some kind of malicious intent. You know you're doing the wrong thing. And it could be that Michael Cohen has evidence to send President Trump to jail after he leaves office just on that. But, Joy, he's kind of being double-teamed, President Trump is, by the Southern District investigation, which does seem to be focused on campaign financing, and the Mueller investigation. And so we don't know what exposure Cohen has with regard to collusion, but Robert Mueller already knows. So the fact that he is talking to Cohen means that he thinks Cohen might have something that would help him with his own investigation. This is Trump's famous fixer. This is the guy who's been with 10 years. This is the guy who's made tape recordings of Trump. So he may very well have the goods on obstruction of justice and collusion, as well as these other campaign financing violations.
And he's someone who's been unfailingly loyal to Trump, and that Trump, per all of the reporting, has been really crappy to, like sort of demeaning him and treating him poorly. It's the kind of person you don't want to be mean to.
He's burned.
Let's play a little bit of Cohen back in 2011 when he was still on Trump's team.
If there's an issue that relates to Mr. Trump that is of concern to him, it's of course concern to me. And I will use my legal skills within which to protect Mr. Trump to the best of my ability.
You know, nothing shocks me about Donald Trump at this point, usually. But the idea that that's the guy that you would be cruel to, it just seems so short-sighted.
Well, I mean, you're kind of more philosophical now. It just goes to his cruelty. Like, he can't help himself at some level, because it's not smart to be mean to this man, this loyal, reek-like servant that knows all your business and all your children's business. it's not a good look. And again, we don't know when you're in that loyal servant role. We don't really know how much you know. We don't know whether or not you were really involved, and so it's hard to know what he might really have on Trump.
Yeah.
But certainly, Trump's treatment of him has inspired Cohen to tell whatever he knows.
Yeah, it's a sort of mob loyalty, right? I mean, Donald Trump, you know, this is a guy who's lost everything, who's facing personal bankruptcy, who's facing, you know, he's lost his business, he's lost his ability to travel. He can only go to Florida, D.C., and New York. He can't go anywhere. He's facing jail time. And Emily Jane Fox has a great report out now, her latest reporting, that he's saying, why am I facing all the consequences? Donald Trump has faced no consequences at all.
Even with the most loyal defendants who think they adhere to omerta and think they're gangster style, they are faced with the full force of the U.S. government prosecuting them. After a while, it's a war of attrition. Even the Michael Cohens of this world who swear loyalty oaths to the president or anybody else, they break down. And Paul Butler will tell you this. He's probably done it himself to defendants, but this is how it works. And you see the one person who up until this week stood fast and did not take a deal was Paul Manafort, which was a clear signal to Trump, who values loyalty. Yeah. If you're going to pardon anyone, all right, forget these other schmoes. Pardon me. I'm the one that has stayed fast. I've held my ground. I am not a snitch until this week, which leads me to believe he may still not be a snitch as to Trump. It may be people close to Trump, or it might be Russians, but he may still be holding out for the possibility of a pardon.
And Joy, to Danny's point, I have, as a prosecutor, stood up in court many times and taken guilty pleas. And there's this part where you say what the evidence would have proven if you'd gone to trial. There was an extraordinary moment yesterday during Manafort's guilty plea where the prosecutor, Andrew Weitzman, Mueller's deputy, got up and said, this is what we would have proven about Manafort if we'd gone to trial. And Joy, he talked for 40 minutes.
Wow.
And then the judge said, that's got to be a record. I never heard that kind of statement of proof in a guilty plea. Mr. Manafort, did you do it? And Mr. Manafort said, yes, I did.
Wow, that's amazing. Can we put up all of the people who are now saying they're either cooperating right now or willing to cooperate with Robert Mueller? There it is. And it's, you know, it's pretty much the full Monty, right? They've got his former national security advisor there. They've got Rick Gates, who was Paul Manafort's deputy, Manafort himself. I think a lot more crucially, Ellie, in a lot of ways, is Alan Weisselberg, who we've been told a lot of times on this set. You know, Tim O'Brien and others who really know Trump and have reported on him. He's got all the goods. He's the CFO of the Trump Organization. This feels like that it's not just about Russia. This is about Trump's businesses as well.
At this point, it's easier to talk about who hasn't been charged, who hasn't been convicted, and who hasn't flipped, right? And if you look at who hasn't been, the only people left on that list have Trump in their last name or are married to Trump.
Yeah.
That really tells you where all of this is facing, right? All of this is focusing. We're closing the circle and closing the circle and closing the circle, and we're now honing in on the core family.
Yeah.
To use something that I would say to my kid, the cheese stands alone now. And that's got to be super problematic if you're Donald.
Lightning round. Who should be the most worried?
Don Jr. still.
Most worried, Danny?
Yeah, Don Jr. I actually agree with you, yeah.
Paul Butler, who should be the most worried about a guy like you coming after them?
Donald Trump Jr.
Everybody agrees. Well, if I'm Donald Trump Jr., I might want to just get a really good lawyer.
He is the weakest link, right?
Ooh,
he is
here
the
we
weakest
go.
link.
I love it. All right. Well, I mean, I love that you went out on that mic drop note. Not that I love that he's the weakest link. Sorry. Danny Zavalos, Ellie and Paul will join us later. Thank you, Danny. Always appreciate you coming in. And Donald Trump's Supreme Court nominee is facing claims of inappropriate sexual behavior. We'll discuss that and what that means for his nomination next.